Hello, my name is Lori Winkler, and I am the injury prevention nurse at SSM Health Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri. Operation Safe Sleep is a presentation that focuses on infant sleep-related deaths and what are the current most up-to-date recommendations for safe sleep practices. My only disclosure is I love our babies and I love our children. A little bit about Cardinal Glennon. Cardinal Glennon is a level 1 pediatric trauma center that serves both Missouri and Illinois. We are the perinatal center for Southern Illinois. We serve as the lead agency for the Safe Kids St. Louis Coalition, which I am the coordinator for. And we also serve as the lead agency for the Missouri Poison Center. The goals of this presentation are, number one, to understand the importance of infant sleep-related deaths, as well as what are the most current recommendations and education we can provide to parents and caregivers. And number two, the goal here is for you to feel empowered to educate caregivers of infants when you return to your own community. The objectives of this presentation: we will review the safe sleep definitions. We will discuss causes of sudden unexpected infant death, also known as SUIDs. We will identify what constitutes a safe sleep environment. We will review the current recommendations for safe sleep practices as published per the American Academy of Pediatrics. And hopefully you will be able to integrate the knowledge that you learned through this presentation of the prevention in infant sleep-related deaths into your own professional practice. So let's start with the definitions. SUID stands for sudden unexpected infant death. And SUIDs is the new term, if you will, which is kind of like the overarching or the umbrella category for SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, and ASSB, or accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed. And we'll go into these and describe these in greater detail later in the presentation. Room sharing is defined as that infant is sleeping in the same room with the caregiver or with someone else, but in their own safe sleep environment. On the other hand, bed sharing is defined as that infant is sharing the same sleep surface as someone else, whether it be a couch, whether it be an adult bed or an adult mattress, whether it be a recliner. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, a baby should never, 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 never share a bed with anyone until the age of 1 year. So let's talk a little bit about SIDS and sleep-related infant deaths. It is the #1 cause of unintentional injury deaths in infants between the age of 1 month and 1 year of age. I ask you why. Developmentally, if you think about what is the normal day in the life of a baby, well, let's see, they eat, they sleep, they poop, and they cry. So developmentally, they're unable to crawl. So they're not able to crawl and get into the cabinets where there may be household cleaning products or medications or things that could harm them. They're not walking yet developmentally. So they're not able to run out into the middle of the street, or they're not able to play yet. So they're not going to injure themselves on a bike or on some sort of other sporting equipment. So if in the normal day of a baby, all they do is eat, sleep, poop, and cry, of course, this makes sense that sleep-related infant deaths would be the leading cause of unintentional injury death in this population. Did you know that every year in the United States, over 3,600 babies of these precious babies that you see on this screen, on this slide, will die from a sleep-related death? And the majority of these precious babies that die will die from an infant death that is preventable. In the United States, there are approximately 3,600 SUID cases each year in our country. And of those 3,600, approximately 1,600 of these deaths will be listed on the death certificate as SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, which leaves almost 2,000, if you will, give or take a few, to be listed on the death certificate as suffocation or undetermined. I will tell you that SIDS does affect babies of all races, religions, and socioeconomic groups, but there are three groups of infants that are at greatest risk. And those are our Alaskan and Native American Indian babies, our Hispanic babies, and our African American babies. You ask me why. I get asked this question all the time. Well, why is that? The answer, I don't know the answer. I can give you my opinion. And my opinion is if you look at these three groups are the family unit is very, very tight. They're very close knit groups. And the woman is the matriarch. So when grandma, our great grandma, or an elder woman gives advice to a new young mother, we don't want to disrespect the matriarch. And so we listen and we trust the advice that they're giving. I will tell you, I have a son who is 28 years of age. And my son, Alex, what I did for him when he was a baby, his room, his nursery, it was beautiful. It had everything in it. It had a crib that had bumper pads, pillows, comforters, mobiles, and stuffed animals. But 28 years ago, the research did not show that that was harmful to a baby. So if I am going to give my son and his wife information on how to help their baby go to sleep, the information that I did with him, it was okay then, but it's not okay now. So it's very, very important that we, when we're educating, that we remember that our elders, especially our elder women, are going to be that trusting resource that our young parents reach out to. So if you can educate elder people, like grandparent age people, we're going to probably get a better rate of changing in behavior, or let me reword that, a better compliancy with safe sleep practices. It is a task, and I do love when I have my parents, but I really love it when I have a grandparent that attends one of our classes and they learn information that is now up to date and things that we have learned now that they were lucky. I should include myself, we were lucky 28 years ago with our children, but we didn't know any better. The other reason that I think, and again, this is my opinion, is within these groups, is that there's a lot of multi-generational living. And so with this multi-generational living, we may have grandma, we may have an aunt, we may have a great aunt, a whole lot of elder people who've already raised children, maybe not by the current recommendations, giving advice again to that younger parent. So it is very, very important that our not only focusing on our education towards our parents, but also try to include their support systems, grandparents, great grandparents, aunts, etc. 90% of these infant deaths will occur before that baby is 6 months of age. The peak time that baby is at their greatest risk is between 1 and 4 months. So I'm going to ask you a question. And when I asked this in the beginning of all of my classes, and you would be surprised whether it is a healthcare provider, whether it is a grandma, whether it is a young new parent. A lot of people don't know the answer to this. At what age can a baby breathe through their mouth? The answer is 6 months. Babies are what we call obligate nose breathers. So that doesn't mean they can't breathe out of their mouth. It just means that is like a compensatory mechanism so that when they get into trouble, they will gasp. So for the first 6 months of life, number one, that baby can only breathe out of their nose. And this is going to make this whole presentation more understandable if you keep that in the back of your mind. The other thing is, remember, that baby was a sperm and an egg, and it developed inside mom's womb, inside her belly, which was a nice, warm, dark environment. And there were no experiences for that baby to incur. And how do we learn? Well, we learn through experiences. Here's a great example. My mother, when I was young, told me, don't touch the stove, you'll get burned. But I, being doubtful of what my mother said, if you will. I wasn't the most well-behaved kid, I'll just tell you. But being doubtful, what did I do? I had to test her knowledge. And so what did I do? I touched the stove and I burnt my hand. So I didn't learn from her telling me. I learned from actually experiencing the pain that I incurred when I touched that stove. So we learn through experiences. So that baby has not learned yet how to breathe. So they forget to breathe. And also the third thing is that the critical developmental period of a baby's brain is from birth until about the age of 6 months. And I will tell you, everything that causes us to survive or that allows us to survive is housed in the back part of our brain, our brainstem. That means it controls our breathing. It controls our heart rate. It controls our blood pressure. We need this part of our brain in order to survive. Well, if it's not developed until the age of 6 months and they forget to breathe until the age of 6 months, oh, wait, and they can't breathe out of their mouth until they're 6 months of age. No wonder these babies, they're learning, but this is what causes them to be at a greater risk of a sleep-related death until the age of 6 months. Male babies are at a greater risk than female babies of dying from a sleep-related death. And you ask me why, again, I don't know the reason why, but I will tell you that if you look at a child and their developmental, when they reach developmental milestones, normally speaking, little girls will reach developmental milestones a little bit earlier than little boys. I personally think it's because males are so much more laid back than females. And the example that I can use and that I think of and that I share with everybody is think about potty training. Who is easier to potty train? And I will tell you, the majority of my parents who have both female and male children will tell you, oh, absolutely, a little girl. Well, little boys are like, so what? I wet myself, either it'll dry or mom will change my diaper. But little girls, the minute they wet themselves, they start screaming, oh, clean me up, clean me up. So do little boys, is it like, oh yeah, I guess I was supposed to breathe. Let me take a breath. I really and truthfully do not, I cannot tell you the statistical or the evidence-based rationale, other than the fact that normally speaking, little girls develop a little bit earlier than little boys. And then most of these deaths will occur in the fall and winter months. So why do you think that is? Well, it's starting to get colder and we can't have a cold baby, can we? So we're going to bundle them up in a blanket, a nice, thick, soft, warm blanket. Or we're going to sleep with them in the bed because we all have to sleep in the same bed because we have problems with heating in our home and we don't have the resources to have adequate heating. The other thing is during these two time frames in these months, this is our frequent time for influenza and RSV. Influenza is the flu. And if any of you have ever had the flu or have experienced the flu, you know there's a lot of congestion and sinus pressure, runny noses. You just feel like garbage. And RSV in a child is like compared to a cold in the adult. Okay. The difference is with a child, they're smaller and it has a greater effect on them. And you may hear them wheezing more frequently. And there is just copious amounts of nasal drainage and mucus. So again, remember what I said earlier, anything that covers their nose, they're unable to breathe. If you or I covered our noses or if our head was stopped up, what would we do? We would open our mouth and breathe through our mouth. If a baby's nose is covered, they can't. And that's what causes them to suffocate and to die. So let's talk about what's going on in the state of Missouri. I told you what was going on nationally, and I will tell you these numbers are pretty similar throughout our whole country. Between 2016 and 2018, according to the Missouri Child Fatality Review Annual Report, the black columns there are those cases that the cause of death was listed as a SIDS death. The gray columns, the medical examiner or the coroner, depending on what county it was investigated in and whoever is responsible for signing the death certificate were classified as undetermined. But look at the difference and look at how high and how many babies died from unintentional suffocation. I will tell you, unintentional suffocation is totally preventable. And that's what is my driving force. My goal in life before I quit this is to eliminate those red columns. In 2018, in the state of Missouri, there were 89 sleep-related deaths. 4 of those had a cause of, I'm sorry, 7 of those had a cause of death listed as SIDS. 18 of the cause of deaths listed on the death certificate were documented or as undetermined. But 64 of these cases, the cause of death was listed as accidental suffocation. So about 82 of these deaths were potentially preventable if only safe sleep practices had been followed by the caregiver. Another analogy or another way to think of this, about 1 infant every 2.5 days died from a sleep-related death, which is the equivalent of 4 kindergarten classes per year. This is something that is totally preventable. There should be 0 infant deaths related to unsafe sleep practices. So remember I told you earlier we would discuss kind of more in detail. So here is that umbrella. SUID is the category or is the overarching category or name given to sleep-related deaths, sudden unexpected infant deaths. And in 1992, they were noticing that normal healthy babies were just dying and they didn't know why. And so they came up with this disease called SIDS. And they came up with 3 or 4 hypotheses what caused this. And when they combined all of the hypotheses, basically the one common denominator there was it was something that had to do with the respiratory center or the breathing center in these babies. So yes, there are babies, and we're going to go through the textbook definition of what SIDS is and accidental suffocation in the next couple of slides. But what they found was they thought, well, what is causing these deaths? Mom would feed the baby, burp the baby, change the baby's diaper, and put the baby down for bed, most of the time on their belly, okay? And the baby wouldn't wake up for their next feeding. So they went in and they reviewed all these death records to look for a trend. And yes, what they found was the majority of these babies were sleeping on their belly. So in 1992, the National Institute of Health and the Unischreiber Foundation for Safe Sleep started the Back to Sleep campaign. So the numbers of SIDS cases went down a little bit, but there still was a significant amount of infants that were dying from sleep-related deaths. So they said, well, just moving them onto their back is not what's causing this. There has to be another cause. So they went back in and they looked for additional trends. Reviewing the death records and the death investigative reports, what they were finding were that these babies were sleeping either in an adult bed, on an adult mattress, which is nice and soft. There were pillows, there were blankets, there were toys, stuffed animals in the bed. The babies were sleeping either some of them were sleeping on their side and they rolled over accidentally, which we call unaccustomed tummy sleeping, and they couldn't flip themselves back over. So they said, hey, wait a minute. Babies can't breathe out of their mouth until they're 6 months old. They forget to breathe. Something's covering their nose and they're suffocating. So these babies were dying from accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed. So they changed in 1994, they changed the campaign from the Back to Sleep campaign to the Safe to Sleep campaign. And that is the ABCs of safe sleep. And that's what we're going to discuss through this presentation, because the majority of our deaths, infant-related deaths, sleep-related deaths, are due to suffocation and strangulation in bed, not SIDS. So what is the textbook definition of SIDS? SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, it is the sudden and unexpected death of an apparently healthy infant under the age of 1 year that remains unexplained after 3 things have been done and proven to be normal. Number 1, a complete medical history review. If, was the baby born prematurely? Was the baby full term? Did mom have prenatal care? Did she have any complications? Did mom smoke, drink, do drugs? Has the baby been sick recently? If all of those are normal, and then when the baby dies, either the medical examiner or the coroner, depending on what county it is, will come in with law enforcement and do a death scene investigation. Sometimes they'll do an actual reenactment, and they take pictures and they do interviews. And I will tell you, the majority of the deaths that I see in the child fatality review panels that I am a member of, for children under the age of 1, the majority of these deaths are sleep related. And there may be a safe sleep environment in the room, but the caregiver, mom or dad or whomever, made the wrong decision. And instead of putting them in that safe sleep environment, put them in bed with them. And now a tragedy has occurred. But if within that death scene investigation, if all of that is normal, and then the post-mortem exam or the autopsy is normal, then the medical examiner or coroner will list the cause of death to be SIDS, are undetermined at this point. So it is crucial when law enforcement, as well as EMS first responders, but primarily with law enforcement, when you are doing a death scene investigation, it is just so important, if you have any infant death under the age of 1, that you need to complete that SUID form, or that sudden unexpected infant death form, in addition to your normal report. This is only going to ensure a thorough investigation. Accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed, it is defined, or means that that child suffocated from something basically covering its nose. Bed sharing, a nice soft adult mattress, soft chairs, recliners or couches, sleeping positions. They were sleeping on their belly, or they were on their side and they rolled over, that unaccustomed tummy sleeping, and they couldn't flip themselves back. Pillows, blankets, something covered the baby's nose, preventing them from breathing. So if we kind of summarize those big textbook definitions, basically an infant sleep-related death is a sudden and unexpected infant death. The infant is usually found in a sleep area. The infant was previously healthy, and there was no clear cause of death before this investigation and before this death took place. So what does the current SIDS research suggest about SIDS? What causes SIDS? As I told you before, the main part of our brain, the brainstem back here, it regulates our ability to breathe, our heart rate, our body temperature, and our blood pressure. So when we breathe in air, we breathe in oxygen. Our waste product, when we blow out, is carbon dioxide. So there's some sort of a malfunction in the back part of this brain that results in the baby not being able to respond to not getting enough oxygen. They're not able to respond to having these increased levels of this carbon dioxide, which is their waste product. They're unable to control their blood pressure or heart rate. They're unable to regulate their body temperature, and they're unable to keep their airway open. So let's talk about a baby. Envision an infant. Babies have big heads. They have very weak neck muscles. Actually, they don't really even have a neck. They kind of sit like this. And so what happens is and this is why we don't want children or babies to sleep in car seats. So what happens is when they doze off, and their trachea or their windpipe is made of cartilage, and it sits right in the front. So with not having too much of a neck, if they go forward, their windpipe closes off. It's very similar to this straw. This looks like a baby's trachea. So this big old head, the weight of them when they fall asleep, their head goes forward because of the weight of their head. And this is what happens, to their windpipe. It shuts down. Now, if you or I were to fall asleep, even though our tracheas also are made of cartilage, but as we age, our bones get harder, our cartilage gets stronger. So as we fall asleep, I would hear you if you fell asleep during my in-person presentation, because I'd hear the noise. But babies, they don't really have necks. So these big old heads go forward, And this is what happens. It kinks off or blocks off that trachea. Not really, you're not going to hear anything, but there's no air that's able to go in. So risk factors are risk factors. Why? And there are a couple of protective factors that we're going to discuss here. So risk factors make it more difficult for the baby to be arousable or to wake up. So things such as prone or side sleeping. Prone means that they're sleeping face down. They're sleeping on their belly. If they're exposed to smoke, whether it be during the prenatal period, if mom is a smoker, that increases the risk by 3 times. If that baby is exposed to secondhand smoke, which means I'm just going to light up a cigarette while mom is holding the baby, but I've had a stressful day, so I'm smoking in the same room, that's your secondhand smoke. That puts that baby at a 2.5 times greater risk. And then third hand smoke also increases the risk by 2.5 times. And that includes having that residual smoke, such as the smoke that's on your hands, in your hair, on your clothes, in the upholstery of a furniture, or in the car. Think about this. If you've ever gotten into someone's vehicle that is a smoker and they tell you, well, I only smoke with the windows down, but it smells like an ashtray. That's the third hand smoke that is embedded into the upholstery of that vehicle. That puts that baby at 2.5 times greater risk of dying from a sleep-related death. Potential asphyxiating environments or suffocation environments would include sharing a bed with someone. Again, that prone or side sleeping position. So if we have the baby, and we discussed it earlier, if they're sleeping on their side and the weight of their body and gravity just makes that baby roll over onto their belly, they're unable to flip themselves back. And so therefore, again, their nose will be kind of embedded into that, whatever it is, whether it be a couch or recliner or a comforter, and hence suffocating them. And any soft or loose bedding, blankets, comforters, non-fitted sheets, something that can cover that baby's nose. So what are the protective factors that we talked about? Well, breastfeeding and pacifier use. And we do advocate breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is the best form of nutrition for that baby, and it's the least expensive. However, what we need to also worry about when we're talking to a mom that's breastfeeding and you're educating a breastfeeding mom is that baby, so in order for that baby to suckle on that mom's breast nipple, the brain is sending impulses that remind that baby, hey, suck, 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 and you'll get full. So they're used to sucking on a nipple that's about this size, and they're getting fed. All right. Oh, and hey, while you're sucking, baby, take a breath. So it's keeping them aroused. So now I bring in a pacifier that's got a nipple about this size, and the baby suckles. The brain is still sending impulses. Hey, suck, 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 and breathe while you're sucking. But nothing, they're not getting any nourishment. They're not getting anything from this. I say that the breast nipple makes the baby happy. The pacifier makes mom and dad happy. Okay. So what happens is they're not used to that. And remember, they haven't experienced life much. So they can get what's called nipple confusion if you introduce a pacifier too soon, where they haven't really latched on to mom's breast yet. And they may not latch back on, which could lead to them not receiving the nourishment and the nutrition that they need to grow. So, and we'll talk about that in a little greater detail when we get to the breastfeeding slide. But those are protective factors in reducing the risk of infant sleep-related deaths, as well as room sharing. You notice I said room sharing, not bed sharing. Those 3 protective factors do increase the arousability in the infant. So if we were doing this in person, this would be your in-person pop quiz. But since we're not, I want you to take a look at this picture and just tell me what is this safe, or just tell whoever's in the room with you, I'm sorry. Is this safe or is this unsafe sleep environment? And if it is unsafe, tell me why is it, or, just kind of make mental note as to why is it unsafe? What do you recognize for it to be unsafe? Or if you feel it's safe, why do you think it's safe? So I will tell you, this is an unsafe sleep environment. The reason being is multiple reasons. Number one, the baby is sleeping on their belly. Number two, there are blankets in that crib with the baby. There are 2 stuffed animals. There's beautiful pillows. There's beautiful bumper pads, all things that could cover that baby's nose and suffocate them. So this is an unsafe sleep environment. What about this? You can buy this in the store. Our caregivers can buy this. And it says Baby Z's for restful nights and happy babies. It's important for you to know that not every item that caregivers or that even you can buy in the store have had safety regulations placed on them by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Car seats have, cribs have, other things have. But this may never have been brought up to the Consumer Product Safety Commission to have safety standards placed on it. But is it safe? No. And I ask you, who sleeps like those 2 caregivers? Probably not too many people, okay? But as a desperate parent, whether it be mom or dad, who's not getting any sleep because the baby's up every 2 hours wanting to feed, okay? That says for restful nights and happy babies. So I don't care how much it costs, I'm gonna buy it so I can get some sleep. But is it safe? The answer is no. For one reason, the main reason is it's in the parent's bed. The other thing is that you could roll over on that baby. But I did have a mom in a class, that brown arching area there that's all padded and nice and cushiony looking. I thought that the supporting material underneath that little pad was plastic. I gave the company the benefit of the doubt, but I actually had a mom in a class once tell me that in fact it's made of cardboard. So yeah, you could roll over on the child that way, but let's just say you don't. Let's just say it wakes you up or you don't necessarily roll over. But what if you get hot in the middle of the night and you throw your blanket off, okay? And that blanket covers the baby's face. Or what if, if you sleep in one position for a long period of time or you don't move that extremity, it kind of goes to sleep, if you will. And so in the middle of the night, you might notice that we move our arm. And what if I were to stretch out my arm and put it right on over top my baby's face? So the answer to the question is this is totally unsafe. Whether they sell it in the store or not, it is unsafe because never, 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 never can a baby sleep in the same bed with anyone until the age of 1 year. That's beautiful. And remember, I told you in the beginning, that's kind of how my son's nursery looked. However, my son had stuffed animals in between every single one of those slats. But is that safe by today's standards? Absolutely not. Number one, you've got the big comforter. Number two, the pillow. Number three, the bumper pads. And what was the reason for bumper pads? The reason for bumper pads were to prevent the child's head from getting stuck or any body part getting stuck in between the slats, which you'll see a picture here in a few minutes. But because children did suffer from strangulation, entanglement, from getting their head stuck in between those slats, the Consumer Product Safety Commission in 2011 instituted safety standards that said, in order for a company to manufacture a crib, it has to meet these following guidelines and criteria. One of the things is the side rail on that crib cannot go down. As you see in this picture, that side rail is able to go up and down. Another one was that the distance between those slats needs to be less than 2 5/8 inches apart, which means that will prevent that child's head from going in between those slats. Other recommendations or guidelines were that stronger material, manufacturing materials needed to be used in order to make that crib. So if you have someone who received a crib from somebody that they knew, Okay. And that person, like my son, was born in 1992. I can tell you at that time his crib was safe, but it does not meet the safety standards set out by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. So I would recommend that they not use that. What about that mobile? And I get asked questions all the time from parents. Is it safe? Well, I'm going to tell you that the mobile itself is safe. It's the location of the mobile that's not safe. And for those of you who do not have children or have never seen the mobile, basically you wind it up, it plays music, and those little animals, the butterfly, the bees, the caterpillar, they spin around and they're suspended on a very thin piece of yarn, ribbon, thread. Okay. Well, as that goes around to entertain the infant, there is a risk that one of those objects could fall off and fall into the bed and cover the baby's nose. So the location is what's unsafe. If there is a caregiver that has a crib, they can put it on the end of the crib and face those stuffed animals opposite, like towards the outside of the crib. So that way, as they're spinning around, if one of those animals were to fall off, it would hit the floor. It would not fit in, it would not fall into the crib. So the mobile is safe. It's just the location directly over the bed that is unsafe. So what information can we share with our parents? Something easy. The ABCDEs of safe sleep. Infants and babies should always sleep following these ABCs of safe sleep recommendations. So babies always, always, always sleep alone. They always sleep on their back, and they always sleep in a safe crib. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the only 3 safe sleep environments that there are for an infant under the age of 1 year is a safety-approved crib, a bassinet, or a portable play yard, also known as a pack and play. Those are the only 3 approved safe sleep environments. So babies always should sleep alone. If there are multiple births and there's twins, triplets, etc., they each need to have their own safe sleep environment. So no more than 1 baby per sleep environment. All fluffy and loose bedding should be removed. I will tell you that you could possibly meet some resistance with some caregivers about, well, my baby needs to have a blanket on them. And they may very well need it because of the lack of heating in their house, in their home at the time. That's a whole nother story that we need to get them hooked up with resources to get heating, appropriate heating in that home as well. But if they are insistent upon using a blanket, this is how they're to use the blanket. The baby needs to be brought down to the end of the crib, and they're to take a lightweight blanket, put it at the nipple line down, and all 3 sides of that blanket are supposed to be tightly tucked on all 3 sides. No, the true recommendation, however, is no blankets in the bed, nothing in the bed. And then always use a fitted sheet, not a flat sheet, but a fitted sheet that's got the elastic that's tightly fitted. They need to make sure that the mattress is tight fitting as well, and that it's a firm mattress, and that the crib, and that it has met the safety regulations as well as that crib. They need to be in a safety approved crib. This is an example of room sharing. Instead of that baby being in between mom and dad, you see that baby's little bassinet or portable crib is right next to mom, and that baby is in a sleep sack. That's what we use instead of covering the baby in a blanket. So that the American Academy of Pediatrics, the recommendation is that the baby remains in the same room as mom for at least 6 months, but no longer than a year, and that this can reduce the risk of sleep-related deaths by 50%. Babies always, 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 always sleep on their back, whether it be nighttime, whether it be nap time, or even after their feedings. The risk of that baby dying from SIDS or a sleep-related death when they are placed on their side is actually, it increases 2-fold. So these are some concerns and questions that I get when I'm teaching my classes. Won't the baby choke? I always heard that if a baby spits up when they're sleeping on their back, that they will choke to death and die. So here's my response. And this is a beautiful diagram that shows you how they will not choke to death on spit up. However, I like to use my hands and I show them and I demonstrate, because they may not have this diagram when they go to talk to grandma or great grandma, but they do have their hands. So this is their windpipe. You see it's smaller. Air is smaller than food. This is their esophagus or their food tube. And it sits on all of us just like this. The airway or the trachea sits in front of the esophagus. So if I am on my back and I spit up, the laws of gravity state whatever goes up is going to come down, and it's going to go down the closest path. So what is the closest path? It's the food tube. If I'm on my stomach and I spit up, it's going to go down the closest path. And what is that? It's the airway. So no babies have ever died from choking to death on spit up. However, thousands and thousands of babies have died from suffocating by being placed on their stomach. Another parental question or concern or statement that I hear frequently is, well, my mom or my grandma told me that they slept with me, or that I slept with them when I was a baby and that I was fine, so it's okay for my baby to sleep with me. Or they might say, well, my best friend, her baby and her sleep together and he sleeps on his belly and nothing ever happened. Okay. So what I do to teach or to help my parents understand and to approach either their mom or their grandmother or their best friend and just say, you're pretty lucky right now, but the research shows that those things, sleeping with the baby or putting the baby on his or her stomach, that increases the chance. And you know what? It might be really good for you to tell them and ask them, when can the baby breathe out of their mouth? So that's kind of how I share with my parents to educate and to go back and share that education with their friends, families, and support systems. Another question another comment that I always hear from my moms is, well, I was always told that if a baby sleeps on their back all the time, their head's going to get flat and they're going to get a bald spot. And I do validate that is true. If that baby is on their back 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that baby's head, because their bones are soft, will become flat and they will get a bald spot. They call that positional plagiocephaly. So how can we prevent that? Well, first of all, the baby hopefully is never in a crib on their back for 24 hours a day. So this is where we encourage our parents to do tummy time, supervised tummy time. And that means those cell phones that we live with, they need to be out of the room completely. This isn't a distractor here. And when that baby, they put them on their stomach and that parent or that caregiver is watching them and they're doing it on a firm surface. So that baby, as soon as that baby's head drops, they need to stop tummy time and they need to let the child rest for, a couple hours, an hour or so, and then try it again. Basically, tummy time, what it's doing is it's strengthening their neck muscles, their shoulder muscles, their arm muscles, but it's also helping with their cognitive brain development. They're learning, okay? And so they see something on the floor and they want it. And they're like, do I really want that? Well, let me see. Oh, yeah, I think I like that, but how am I going to get it? So they're learning cognitively. The way to get that is to lift up their behind, tuck in their legs, and off they go, because they know mom and dad are not going to get it for them. So it does help towards the progression of crawling. Again, like I said, it's always on a firm surface, and tummy time is always, always, always supervised. The other ways that we can prevent this positional plagiocephaly or this head flattening is think about you and think about how they tell us that we need to flip our mattress. In order to save the life of our mattress, you need to flip it every 6 months. Because our heavy parts, our heavy dependent parts, if we sleep in the same position night after night, what happens to the mattress is it pushes in and pushes in and pushes in. But see, we have the strength in our muscles to lift up out of that rut that we've created and position ourselves in a flatter surface. A baby, the same thing happens because remember, I told you their head is the biggest part on their body. They don't have the muscle strength in their neck to lift up and move it out. So their head pushes down on that mattress, pushes down, and it leaves a rut. Their head, they cannot move it out of that rut. And so what happens is it causes the head to get flat and it causes a bald spot. So instead of flipping the mattress in the baby's crib or pack and play or bassinet, what mom or dad can do is reposition the baby. So this time when the baby goes to sleep, we'll put their head at this end of their sleep environment. The next time they'll put their head at that end. And they just keep rotating. That will save the life of that mattress. It will remain firm. We won't get any ruts in it as quickly. And it will reduce the risk of the head getting flat and getting a bald spot. But is the baby comfortable? I get asked all the time. Are they comfortable sleeping on their back all of the time? What did I tell you in the very beginning of this PowerPoint? We learn through experience. And unless you put your baby on their belly, they'll never know if that's comfortable. Or unless you put that baby on their side, they won't know. If every single time that baby is put down to sleep on their back, that's all they know. And eventually they will, at about 4 to 5 months, they will start to assume, their own sleeping position, just like you or I. You can put me in bed on my back and I'll lay there for a few minutes, but eventually I'm going to move to a more comfortable position. So B stands for back. And again, this is what I just told you. At approximately 4 to 5 months, the baby will assume their own sleeping position. So what the recommendations by the American Academy of Pediatrics are, is what happens when we put the baby on their back and they roll over. Parents, that scares them. So the recommendation is the first 3 times that the parent or the caregiver notices that they're flipping, we want them to reposition that baby on their back. Kind of like retraining the brain, if you will, that, oh, wait, this is the way I'm supposed to sleep. After that, if the baby continues to roll onto their side or onto their belly, more than likely it'll be right at around age 4 to 5 months. Their brain will be developed enough to know that if I flip over, I need to turn my head to the side and not have it go directly into the mattress. We already talked about changing the direction of the baby's sleep, position to reduce the occurrence of the flat head, if you will. They always are on their back. And then instead of using a blanket, the recommendation is that they're in a sleeper or in a sleep sack. And this baby is in both, actually. They're in a long sleeve sleeper and they're in a lightweight sleep sack. As you see, that baby, there's really no risk of that sleep sack coming up and covering that baby's nose. I will tell you 85% of the hospitals, and probably more now, nationwide, when the baby gets sent home, they get sent home with a swaddle sleep sack because babies like to be swaddled for about the first couple of months. And then those hands get to coming out of that swaddle. And so the recommendation, if they do have a swaddle sack, is that we really only keep them in that swaddle sack until they start to see those hands coming out, because they can push that swaddle off, which becomes like a loose blanket and can cover their nose. And then they'll go into this next size, a wearable blanket or a sleep sack. Breastfeeding, we already talked about not introducing a pacifier until breastfeeding has been well established and latching on because of the nipple confusion, and that they are both considered to be protective factors in reducing the risk of SIDS. If I walked into my son and daughter-in-law's nursery and I saw that crib, I would just be appalled, and I would think that they didn't love my grandchild. And most of us grandparent-aged people will say the same thing. Don't you love my grandchild? What is wrong? That is horrible. That's ugly. There's nothing in there. And so what I encourage my caregivers and my parents to do is to tell us grandparents, no, I do love our baby. I refer to this as baby jail because I watch a lot of like crime shows and somebody's always in jail. And so you see that in jail, there's that metal bench or concrete bench. And if they're good, they get a nice little firm mattress that's only about so thick. And then the crib slats remind me of the bars on the jail cell. So I call this baby jail. Nothing is in that crib. Nothing. No quilts, no comforters, no pillows, no bumper pads, no stuffed animals. Nothing at all is in that crib. Another parental question and concern, well, why are bumper pads not safe? And we spoke about that earlier when we talked about the safety of a crib. As you see the infant underneath the blue blankets, there are bumper pads. There is way too much stuff in that crib with that baby. And they moved and maneuvered themselves into the corner, which made those bumper pads come down and cover their face. So they can suffocate from that. Or they can become entrapped, as you see on the picture on the right. And this is why the Consumer Product Safety Commission set safety standards for manufacturers with cribs. So, you can recommend, a lot of parents ask me frequently, well, what if I see a crib at a garage sale or at a thrift store? Okay, now thrift stores are not allowed to sell car seats. Many of them do, though. I have seen them there. But they are allowed to sell cribs. So what I recommend to parents, as you see, that's like a soda can or a juice can. If they have a can of water, soda, or juice, not beer because they can't drink and drive, if that can will fit between the slats of that crib, then they need to avoid purchasing that crib. Or if the side rail goes down, they don't want that crib. If there's any missing parts, even a screw, and everybody, even my husband will say, well, I can get a screw. Well, no, you want the same screws that are used throughout that crib because the threading may be different. But other than that, if the soda can doesn't fit, the side rail doesn't go down, it's not missing any parts, absolutely, they can purchase that crib. This is the reason, because those safety standards were set, we don't see as many of those entrapment or strangulation deaths. But what I see every month at the Child Fatality Review Board, why babies should not sleep on an adult mattress, is the picture on the left. The baby rolls on that soft mattress. They get trapped in between the soft mattress and the hard wall, and they cannot get themselves out. They get wedged, if you will, and they'll suffocate. The other thing is the dad with the baby on the couch. A lot of times that dad does not want that baby to roll off onto the floor, so he's going to hold on. So we have the risk of him overlaying on top of the baby, suffocating the baby. The other risk, or the other thing that I know parents, that I've seen parents do, is that, I might fall asleep and I don't want to roll on top of my baby. Oh, I know. I'll put the baby behind me. So what happens is that baby gets kind of wedged in between that nice soft back cushion of the couch and the seat cushion, and they get wedged. Their face is covered, their nose is covered, and they suffocate. And when you're educating parents, please use the word suffocation. It kind of has more effect, and people understand the word suffocate more so than asphyxiation and terms such as that. So the crib or the pack and play that you see on top, that blue pad that's on the top of that pack and play, that is a changing table. And how you can tell is you can see how soft that cushiony area is and how thick it is. That is not a safe sleep environment. Now, some portable play yards or pack and plays come with two of those. One is more firm. It's called a napper. But I still don't recommend letting babies sleep in those overnight, in those nappers, because if the baby gets to moving, they could accidentally cause that the stability of the entire pack and play to flip over. So the bottom one, the brown pack and play, that's a bassinet that's in the top part of that pack and play. And that's going to be more comfortable for the baby anyway. All right. And they can stay in that until they're about 2 to 3 months of age. When they really start moving a lot and rolling around in that on that bassinet, then it's time to remove the bassinet, take the mattress in the bassinet and put it in the bottom of the pack and play, at which time that baby can sleep in that pack and play until they're about 2 years of age. But we want to make sure when we're educating our parents that they know how to set up the pack and play, and that it's set up correctly, that they only use the mattress that is provided with that pack and play, and to use a tightly fitted pack and play sheet. Okay. So not a crib sheet, but a sheet that is made specifically for a pack and play. And that always, always, always make sure that the crib or the pack and play does meet the Consumer Product Safety Commission safety standards. This is a video that shows you how to set up and take apart a pack and play. You can always share this link with your parents or caregivers when you are educating, if they do not know how to do it. A pack and play is a smaller version of a playpen, and it's portable. So if they're going to go to grandma's house or to a friend's house to, to have them babysit, grandma doesn't need a crib. They can take this pack and play. I will give you a little warning though. You might want to turn the music down because it's just kind of annoying. It's just music in this video. So in order to set up the pack and play, we're gonna, it comes in a carrying case. So we want you to take it out of the carrying case. And then what you're going to do is release the Velcro strips. That is your mattress. Firm on one side and it's a little cushiony on the other. Now we're going to open up the pack and play. You have to push the center gray part down, or whatever, the center of it down yet. You want to make sure it's flipped up on all 4 side rails until you hear that locking mechanism. Then we're going to push down the center of the pack and play. Sometimes you can lift it up in order for it to kind of break that mechanism. We're going to then place the mattress inside of the pack and play, and then those Velcro straps that you are fastened, there's little slits on the bottom of the pack and play, as well as on the bottom of the bassinet section. We want you to affix those Velcro straps to that, and that keeps the mattress stable. Now, in order to set up the bassinet, take out the mattress, take the bassinet, which is included in most of your pack and plays, and then it comes with 8 clips. You want to make sure that each of those clips, each of the 2 clips are on the side, opposite sides, if you will, of that locking mechanism. So you don't want to cover up the locking mechanism. Now, what she does that I don't recommend is she pushes straight down. I encourage parents, because that plastic is plastic and it's tight, I encourage them to start on one end and kind of rock it down to fix to the back. Then connect the 2 metal rods together. That gives the bassinet support. And then we place our mattress in the bassinet portion. Again, make sure you secure the Velcro strap to the bottom of the bassinet to make sure that mattress stays stable. So now we're going to go to grandma's house. We've got to take this down. We're going to remove the mattress. And then, whereas before we locked the 4 side rails up first, now we're going to actually put the middle section up. So we're going to kind of do the opposite. So usually most of them come with a strap, like a nylon strap. Just pull that up, and then we're going to go and unlock all 4 sides of the side rails. We're going to push down, there's a button on the underneath of the side rail. So kind of lift up, pushing the button, fold the pack and play together, wrap it back up in the mattress, and put it back in the travel bag. It does not take up a lot of space in the vehicle, and they're not really that heavy. But please share this YouTube link if you do encounter a parent that is unfamiliar with how to set one up or take one down. These are assistive devices to help the child go to sleep. Once they go to sleep, they come out and they go flat on their back. And I know this is opposite of what we parents were told. The number 1 rule of thumb is you never wake a sleeping baby. Well, the research has shown that you don't have to wake them all the way up, but you need to take them out of that car seat, swing, bouncy seat. If they wake up, they're just going to have to wake up. They'll fall right back asleep, and put them flat on their back in a safe sleep environment. Because if you think about it, each one of these devices, that child is in a forward facing position. And again, like we discussed earlier, when we fall asleep or we nod off, our head goes forward. So what happens to that windpipe? Their head goes forward. That windpipe kinks off just like this straw, and no air is going in. So that it's so important that once they fall asleep, they come out and they go flat on their back. I'll tell you, I did have a class that I was teaching, and I had a mom in the class, and she was very, very quiet through the whole class until we got to this slide. And she raised her hand and she said, "Miss Lori, may I say something?" I said, "Absolutely." So she stood up, she turned to all of the other participants in the class, and she said, "Please listen to what Miss Lori just told you." Her daughter, she said she had fed her. It was afternoon. It was an afternoon nap. She fed her lunch. She put her in the swing because she said, "I just had a couple of chores to do. I had to like do the dishes and, things right there." I was watching her. So I put her in her swing because she hadn't fallen asleep yet while I could do the dishes. And I kept looking at her, and she just seemed to be sleeping when in fact her head went forward and her daughter died. So she begged all of the participants to please listen. Again, they're facing forward. Once they fall asleep, they come out, they go flat on their back in their own safe sleep environment. So this just is kind of a picture of a baby in a car seat. Again, that's forward facing, and you see how that head is going down. No air is going in through those nostrils. So this is unsafe for that baby. We do not want to smoke. So D stands for do not smoke or expose the baby to any sort of smoke fumes, whether it be cigarettes, marijuana, vaping fumes. So no smoking allowed in the house around the baby, and no smoking in the car. A lot of times our grandparents are smokers, and moms and dads, they need grandma's help. So what I discuss with my parents is that, the baby cannot be exposed to any smoke. And, I understand that smoking is an addiction, just like drinking alcohol, overeating, gambling, doing drugs. And you can't just quit because the baby's in the house. So they need to come up with a plan. And mom or dad may even be a smoker. So what I recommend to parents is come up with that plan. If you need to smoke, you need to go outside to smoke, wear a smoking jacket. When you're done smoking, leave the jacket outside, because if they bring it in, it's going to be that third-hand smoke, okay? And then wash their hands real well. I actually also encourage them to rinse out their mouth. If there is mouthwash available, use mouthwash. If not, just kind of swish and spit some water just to get any residual smoke fumes out of their mouth before they handle the baby. We do not want the baby to be overheated. And I will tell you, being an emergency room nurse for over 30 years, I will tell you, and I work nights, I've seen so many babies that mom and dad bring the baby in. My baby has a fever. And that baby's cheeks are nice and red and rosy, and they're wearing all of the clothes that are in their dresser, in their closet. They borrow clothes from their neighbors, and that baby's eyes are bugging out, and they look like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. And the mom's like, "My baby's got a fever," and the baby's looking at you like, "Would you just tell my parents that I'm hot?" So the rule of thumb is 1 layer of clothing more than the caregiver has on, that baby will be comfortable. We also encourage that the temperature in the room be set between 68 and 72 degrees. And actually the use of a fan, whether it be a ceiling fan, whether it be a tower fan or a table fan, even on low, it's going to circulate the air. So even keeping that on when the baby is sleeping can reduce the risk of SIDS. And then, of course, never, never, never cover the baby's head with a blanket. I often get asked about home monitors and, do they help prevent SIDS? And the answer is no. They actually, all they do, and the research has shown that the recommendation is that parents avoid the use of home monitoring systems, because the effectiveness and the safety has not been tested. So those recommendations come from the American Academy of Pediatrics. I will tell you what they do is they monitor the amount of oxygenation in the baby. However, those sensors have to be placed exactly in the exact right place. The temperature of the digits, whether it be fingers or toes, has to be a normal temperature, and they can't move. So in like our asthmatics and in the hospitals, we have these things called pulse oximeters. And for those of you that have experienced having a pulse oximeter on your finger, you will know if your hand is too cold, if you move that digit, it will make the alarm go off. Well, what's that going to do to the caregiver? It's going to increase their levels of anxiety. So avoid the use of any home monitoring system that indicates that it will reduce the risk of SIDS or sleep-related deaths. So there's a national organization called Cribs for Kids, and basically it's their mission to make sure that our infants do not die from sleep-related deaths. They provide education. They do have various programs that Safe Sleep Ambassador, they have hospital certification. And the one program that they have is their initiative, if you will, is the National Public Safety Initiative. The Cops and Cribs program is geared for law enforcement, as well as Operation Sleep Sound, which is geared for our fire departments and our EMS providers. This class, the information that I'm giving you, all of our information is evidence-based. A lot of the information that you've received in this presentation came from their training curriculum, and that because the messaging needs to remain consistent. Through their National Public Safety Initiative throughout the country, some fire departments, some police departments have chosen and have become partners with Cribs for Kids to become a distribution center for Pack and Plays. If you need any further information on it, you can always check out their website and under their National Public Safety Initiative. And it tells you how to become a partner and what are the requirements. So when we're educating our parents, we need to interview or use motivational interviewing. Remember, you are trying to change behavior, all right? So you need to become a helper in this change process. And so that means avoid telling, you want to make sure that you're providing them with the most current recommendations that are evidence-based. And also, please provide them with an explanation for these recommendations. For example, the explanation that I gave you about the babies in a car seat. Well, don't just tell the parent your baby can't sleep in a car seat. Explain to them why. Again, use your hands, use a straw. And once you are able to do that and provide these explanations, that also is going to help elicit these behavior change to become more positive. You need to be culturally sensitive, be culturally knowledgeable. In some cultures, that is their norm, to sleep with the baby. Okay, so you need to be culturally sensitive and be knowledgeable of that culture. Always, 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 when interacting with anyone, always be non-judgmental, and you're going to have to move your personal biases and judgments. They have to be moved to the side, because otherwise you will get nowhere when you're educating parents. And you also need to recognize the role of social networks and social norms when parents are making decisions regarding their child's safety. So what is a social network? A social network is a group of people with whom that caregiver, or in fact you, communicate. It could be your friends, your family, your peers, okay? And I will tell you that behaviors are not entirely, you notice I said behaviors instead of just parental behaviors. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Behaviors are not entirely based on scientific education. And so therefore, they can be difficult to alter. And the best example I can give you is our present day of living, okay? And that is the world of COVID. People are non-compliant with wearing masks. They're non-compliant with social distancing. Some people feel as though that this doesn't even exist. But what I can guarantee you is that parental behaviors are not usually based on scientific education. And that these behaviors are always, or highly, not maybe always, highly reliant on what these parents, especially our young parents, on non-factual information that they're receiving from their social network as well as social media platforms. So if mom said, you slept with me when you were a baby, nothing happened, I know how to put a baby to sleep. You put them in bed with you, you put them on their belly, and you pat them on their fanny. And I promise you, they're going to go to sleep. Well, they already have that trusting relationship with that caregiver. And so they're going to believe them. All right. Social norms are the rules of a group that define whatever that behavior, value, or attitude is to be appropriate. And there's two different types of social norms. There are descriptive norms, and descriptive norms are what that caregiver perceives to be normal. And their injunctive norms are what is the behavior that is acceptable by the social networks. What does that caregiver perceive to be an acceptable behavior by their social network? And I will tell you a good one, probably a good example is putting the baby on the back. A lot of our young caregivers know to put the babies on their back. And so that's acceptable. But they put them on their back in the same bed with them. So we've got a lot of work to do. Also note that with social norms, that an individual is likely to do what we perceive to be the normal and what we feel is going to be acceptable to prevent us from being judged by our social network. And social norms are highly, highly, highly influenced by our social networks. And that also includes the social media platforms. Our young caregivers live on their phones and on their computers. And whatever mommy blogs say, whatever advertisements says, that's what's going to influence their behavior. And it may not always be the current recommendations or a safe behavior. If you know anyone that has lost a child to a sleep-related death, or if you encounter this in your scope of practice, please share Infant Loss Resources phone number with them. It's listed on this slide. They do have a support group for families that have lost infants. They also do provide education, as well as, like, I teach a baby safety class in the community. They do as well. They provide pack and plays. They educate healthcare providers. So they are another great resource. However, in order to not have to utilize their services for grief support, please, please, please remember the ABCs of safe sleep. The babies are going to sleep the safest when they are alone on their back in their own safe sleep environment or crib. They're not exposed to smoke, that's the D. And that the E is they do it every time they sleep. Here is my contact information. I thank you for viewing this presentation. Please do not ever hesitate to reach out to me, either via email or via phone, if I can be of any further assistance. I wish you all the best of luck. I please am asking each of you to go back into your own community and share the safe sleep message, because actually just today at one of the Child Fatality Review Board meetings, we discussed numerous infants that have died from a sleep-related death. This is a picture of one of my graduates. Mom came to my baby safety class, and so I got to meet her after she was born. Thank you and have a great day.